the chair of Thank you, the chair of outreach for the Citywide Council for District 75. This meeting will be recorded. And I am so grateful to have Marie Trottier here today. She is from TSA, and she will be giving us a presentation in regard to the outreach and engagement to what TSA does, how we can travel, what we can expect for transportation and security with the Transportation and Security Administration, the different things that are available to us as parents with children of special needs, depending upon what that need may be. There are a lot of different components and pieces that a lot of us may not be aware of. I can personally say I have traveled with TSA Cares through JFK, and through LaGuardia, and it has been a game changer, lifesaver. And I want to go ahead and bring Marie to the floor. As I said, she is the Outreach and Engagement Program Manager with TSA. So Marie, I am going to go ahead and give it over to you so that you can go ahead and let our parents know a little bit more about the program and its benefits. Welcome, and thank you for being here again
and
tonight.
Thank you for the invitation. I greatly appreciate it, and it's an honor and a blessing for me to be here. So I am part of the Civil Rights Office at TSA headquarters near Washington, D.C. I'm the Outreach and Engagement Program Manager and also a Senior Policy Advisor. And so in my role, I'm working with organizations throughout the country on disabilities and medical conditions to enhance TSA's screening process and engagement with travelers and families. And Christy, are you able to pull up the slide?
I am. One moment.
Okay, thank you.
You're more than welcome.
No. So again, in terms of screening travelers with disabilities and medical conditions, and Christy, if you can move to the next slide, please. So TSA's mission is to protect the nation's transportation systems to ensure freedom of movement for people and commerce. We all know that TSA was stood up after the events of 9/11/2001. And again, it's a situation of keeping bombs and other nefarious items off of airplanes. And so just on Friday, TSA screened 2.6 million people across 440 airports. And we know that summer travel, with Memorial Day weekend coming this weekend, is going to be a really busy travel season. If you can move to the next slide, please. So for TSA's operations, we do operate the security screening activities at over 450 federalized airports, all 50 states, as well as Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, Samoa, and the Northern Mariana Islands. We have approximately 60,000 TSA officers, and again, over 2.2 million travelers, and on Friday it was 2.6 million. And so we're screening for weapons, explosives, and other hazardous items. It's in the news all the time of our officers catching travelers carrying guns in their carry-on or other things that were not appropriately secured and everything else. So that's been a real problem, continues to be a problem. All TSA officers receive training with emphasis on treating passengers with dignity, respect, and sensitivity. Next slide, please. TSA PreCheck. For those of you who may travel even once a year, TSA PreCheck is an expedited screening program and generally has shorter lines and wait times. Travelers with PreCheck do not need to remove shoes, 311 liquids, belts, light jackets, or laptops at participating airports. Officers may swab your hands, and the swab of your hands is an explosive trace detection. They may swab a mobility aid, equipment, or other external medical devices only to test for explosives. Footwear may undergo additional screening, but not required to remove off your feet. And you can request to be seated at any time during the screening. For more information, you can go to tsa.gov to learn more about TSA PreCheck. Next slide, please. But what Christy was talking about that she's used that I want to talk about is our very robust program that continues to be enhanced, which is TSA Cares in the Passenger Support Specialist Program. TSA.gov provides information about what travelers may expect during screening and how to prepare. The TSA Cares is a toll-free helpline at this phone number, 1-855-787-2227, and it provides information on screening procedures pertaining to those with disabilities, medical conditions, or other unique circumstances. The representatives are available Monday through Friday. 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Time, and 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. weekends and holidays. TSA Cares coordinates the assistance to the checkpoint via the Passenger Support Specialist Program. So the PSSs are TSA officers with advanced training on helping individuals with disabilities and medical conditions, as well as other circumstances through the checkpoint. It's open to all travelers who may need assistance of any kind, and certainly the level of service will vary based on the airport's resources. It's encouraged that you call at least 72 hours ahead of travel so that they have the opportunity to coordinate through the airport you're flying out of in terms of that individual support. But again, we all know that there may be family travel or emergency travel that's less than 72 hours. And I encourage you still to call TSA Cares, explain the circumstances for your children, your family member, whatever the situation may be, to request that passenger support specialist, the TSA Cares, through the airport for your upcoming travel. Next slide, please. So within our office, we are the Disability and Multicultural Branch. We are the Civil Rights and Liberties Ombudsman and Traveler Engagement Office, serving as the primary point of contact within TSA for reviewing, conducting inquiries, and making final determinations regarding passenger complaints that are alleging discriminatory conduct within TSA screening procedures. And this is all based on civil rights protections based on disabilities, medical conditions, race, gender identity, religion, national origin, age, and age is any age in that situation. So all of those things. And again, within my role, I conduct all of the outreach for the Disability and Multicultural Coalition member organizations. We create and provide training for the field and for the public. We've been doing a lot of virtual online training these past 3 years, and we're about to start going out to airports and out into the field. We review and we support all of TSA and DHS policies since we're a component of the Department of Homeland Security. We do conduct intergovernmental outreach specifically regarding the protection of civil rights. And again, our office coordinates the Passenger Support Specialist Program as well as the Language Access Program. And if we can go to the last slide, please. Where we can, and so this is my information, and we're going to open it up to any questions, comments you may have, and any information that I didn't provide that you may wish to have provided to you. And Christy, if you want to stop sharing your screen, that will be fine.
There was one thing that I did want you to walk everyone through in the sense of, if I am a parent that has a child with a special needs, what are the steps? What is the first thing that I should do if I have a child that has additional medications or needs a wheelchair, or like if I've never heard of the program, but I know now I can call TSA Cares. Do I only call TSA Cares? Do I need to call the airline? What are the steps that the parents may need to know so that they're fully aware of how to move and engage once they book a flight to travel with their families or child?
Okay, no, and that's an excellent question, and thank you, because the airports are so huge and large. There are actually, I mean, 3 separate entities. So there's the airport authority. So so again, is someone who also travels to New York City a lot. So let's just deal with JFK. So again, you've got JFK as the airport and the airport authority that owns all of the real estate. And then yes, you have the airline. I myself, as you can see, I'm a person with dwarfism. So I have a physical disability and I do use wheelchair assistance. And so I'm calling the airline. So I'm calling American or Delta or whatever if I'm not using my own wheelchair, which I don't use a wheelchair on an ongoing basis, but the amount of ambulating in the airport in terms of getting to the gate, I need that wheelchair assistance, certainly. And then TSA Cares. So again, you may be calling the airline in that situation, but definitely also TSA Cares, because TSA Cares is going to be what gets you through the checkpoint. And you're going to say like that you've got extra medication and those kinds of things, because when you call TSA Cares, not only to book a passenger support specialist, but you can get helpful tips and helpful assistance because they may advise you to pack some of the medication and extra things in your check baggage and not everything in carry-on in that situation. Because you typically, in terms of carry-on, it's usually in terms of like, what do you need for the flight or the ongoing flights if you're connecting or whatever. Whereas if you're going to be staying, like, and going to Disney World or going someplace else where you're going to stay for 5 days or a week or something, you may want to pack things, in check baggage just so you have all of that information. But you can also go to TSA.gov, and there's a lot of information there for passengers with disabilities and medical conditions. But again, you can call TSA Cares just with questions and information ahead of time. So let's say you're planning on traveling like 4th of July week or whatever, but you want to get some questions now. Maybe your child has new medical equipment or new medications, and you want to just understand some questions about that. Does that help in answering those parts of your question in the travel?
Yes, and I know there was a few programs that work with children with autism if they wanted to be able to stop by the airports just to be able to see how the sensory went or to get them acclimated prior to going. Could you speak about that a bit?
Sure, absolutely. We work with those programs all over the country because, again, especially for individuals with autism, children with autism, and other similar disabilities and diagnoses, the overstimulation, the noise, the lights, the everything at an airport. So yes, we work with a lot of those organizations, even at the local level, to partner with the airport, to partner with the airport authority and with TSA. And if any of your parents or your schools or whatever have any of those questions and want to partner specifically with TSA, like at JFK or LaGuardia or Newark, just reach out to me. Just send me an email and I will connect you with those individuals, because those are really good programs to help the students and have them, be able to see. And I know, the airport authority and the airline also do it to get the kids and the families like on a plane in a simulated kind of way, so that they can meet someone who's in uniform as the pilot and the captain, the same way to meet our officers in uniform, so that it's not a fear factor when they actually do travel.
So would you, I'm looking to see in the chat, do we have any questions so far? I don't want to turn it into a Q&A and take all of the time away from anyone. Does anyone have a question? If not, I will say, as a person who I don't fly very often. Oh wait, we do have a question. The person that has iTunes S iPad, if you're able to unmute to ask your question.
Good evening.
Whoops, you just muted again. There you go.
Good evening. I have a son that suffers from autism, and I just wanted to get your email address so that we can maybe participate in that program where we live in New York, to see if because we tried to get on a plane before and he really freaked out. We didn't make the flight. So I would love to participate in something where he can actually get acclimated to a plane, because I want to go away for the summer and I'm kind of nervous because I do not want him to freak out again. I want it to be a great experience for him.
Certainly. So Christy just put my signature in there, but I'm going to put my email address as well.
Thank you so much.
Yep. No, thank you. And I completely understand. Definitely. Yes.
Aisha Husbands, this is one of our council members as well. Thank you for joining. Go ahead and unmute.
Good afternoon, Ms. Trotter and everyone else. I'm not sure if you mentioned this because I came on kind of late, unfortunately. I just wanted a quick question. Is this available in other countries as well? Like in returning. So if you leave America, this is available. But if you're in another country, if you're in Europe or Asia or somewhere in the Caribbean, are these services available in those countries?
Okay. So in terms of Europe, Africa, other countries, no. Now, if you're in the Caribbean, but you're in the American islands, if you're in, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, et cetera, yes, it is, because TSA is there. TSA is in all of the American territories. But again, in terms of to your question, and I will just tell you from personal experience as someone with a physical disability who's traveled around the world each way, no, it's not available in all other countries. So it's one of those situations that if you are looking at planning a trip, what I would start with is I would start with your airline. Start with your airline, whether it's American, United, Swiss Air, Air India, whoever it is, because that's what I've done for myself, is as well as work with the airlines to see if they have something. And Europe is getting more progressive, but I'm not seeing anything like TSA Cares, like within the EU and other places yet. But that's a phenomenal question.
Marie, what would you say in the sense of when you're booking your flight, right? And I know one of the parents spoke about the hesitancy that she had, and trust me, I had it too. And I found that my son, he has behavioral issues, sensory issues, and like some of the things that you might tell parents that they may want to think ahead of when you're calling the airlines, such as I know my son can walk, but from security to the gate to it's excessive. So you would want to request a wheelchair even when you're creating your ticket. The things that you may want to think of in the beginning of creating a ticket to go fly or to travel and things of that nature. Are there things that we may want to think about and look out for to put in our ticket as we register?
Well, right, exactly. In terms of your reservation, absolutely. And that's the same thing I do. I mean, I'm ambulatory, can walk, but I can't walk those excessive distances. And especially if I've got a carry-on bag and everything else, and people are rushing and pushing and whatever. And so again, I'm the height of a 9-year-old. So in a situation of children, with disabilities and special needs, or someone like myself, you don't want to get pushed and jostled. I mean, that's just a very unpleasant experience. And especially, for children with, developmental, behavioral autism, other issues, then you want to have it as calming an experience. So definitely. And the other thing too, I think, in terms of both with the airline and within TSA Cares, if you need to bring, snacks, I mean, definitely if you need to bring special food, or in that situation for children, absolutely. But if you even need to bring like snacks or, an extra, I mean, more excessive snacks than the typical person, I would say, get that okayed with the airline and with TSA Cares, so that someone knows that you're going to have, 6 bags of, goldfish, I mean, in your bag, or those kinds of things, because it's one of those situations you don't want to get stopped on the day of in that piece. And so you want all that information. And you're right, both with the airline in that piece, because I'm sure, like with your son, like putting him in a wheelchair and helping him to get through, I mean, it speeds it up, but it also is less stimulation for him.
Yes. Did you explain the difference between what the airline would do and what TSA would do for parents that have children with special needs, or need what level of need they or help they would get from the airline versus TSA, and what the difference is?
Okay, so I will just say with the airline, it's airline to airline. It's not consistent. Okay, so in that situation, I think, like, for me, as someone with a physical disability, I have found like American Airlines and Delta Airlines to be the best. JetBlue used to be my favorite, but it's not anymore. I mean, and that's just personal experience of flying a lot and whatever. But I've just have found that airlines that will give me that individualized attention, and especially like even online, I don't want to sit on hold for 30 minutes or 60 minutes waiting to talk to somebody for all that information. If I can go on to delta.com or americanairlines.com and fill in all that information and ask my questions, and then someone responds to me or someone sets a time to call me, I find that better. Or even a live chat. If I can have a live chat with someone, and I'm sure as parents, the same thing. I mean, when your kids are resting or sleeping, or you've got some, if as parents you have any quiet time with your families, then in that way to be able to get that information. But you want to make sure in terms of that, that you're getting that. But I will just say that each airline is different and each airline does their own. Even with the ADA, it's the same thing with the Department of Transportation. We know that with the Department of Transportation, airlines are still breaking a lot of wheelchairs and things that go in cargo and storage. And so those are things that the disability community and the disability organizations are fighting here in Washington to make better. But I think it's one of those things that to make sure you're asking all your questions and making all your requests, both with the airline and with TSA Cares.
Okay. Is there any information, like, I'm not sure how many of our parents may have students with the service animal or things of that nature. How would that work if they were traveling and needed to bring the service animal as well?
Okay, same thing. The service animals are allowed. I mean, they're allowed by law. And so in that situation, and so again, with TSA, again, I would use TSA Cares just so they know that it's like, a family in terms of however big the family is, and there's a service animal, whether it's for seizures or wheelchair users or other disabilities in that situation. We don't remove the harnesses and those kinds of things. But the same thing with the airline, because obviously, again, it's allowed by law, but the airline needs to know to allow the space for the animal as well as your family and those kinds of things. So anything related to any disability or medical condition, certainly just make sure that you've got the details and you're asking the questions, both of the customer service or accessibility or disability service of the airline for those who have them, as well as through TSA Cares.
I have one last question. I don't want to hog all the questions up, but I love this program, so I want to get it all out there. We do service a lot of families, a lot of different cultures, a lot of different languages. How would people that don't have English as a dominant language move through this program if they are traveling through the airport?
Phenomenal question. So we have language access obligations to people who are not primarily English speakers in that situation. So again, if it's helpful, if there is someone, because this is another place to utilize TSA Cares, if at all possible, especially if it is, and we have translations in 24 different languages in that situation. But again, for languages that aren't as common, again, it's another place to use TSA Cares to make sure that the airport is ready. So there are language access binders at the checkpoints that our officers use for the most common phrases. And the other thing that TSA has done, which I think is great because we have so many officers, is we capitalize on officers that speak multiple languages. So if it's a situation, that I'm coming and I'm bringing, I'm bringing my parents who don't speak English in that situation, so that I don't have to do all the translating while they're actually going through screening, then I can put that request in to have officers who can communicate with them in that situation to help them through the checkpoint. Because again, none of us are just one thing. It's one of those things that again, we may be male, we may be female, we may be transgender, we may be non-binary, we may be of any race, of any ethnicity, any age, any religion. The same thing with like religious clothing, headwear items, all of those things too, to screen with respect and appropriateness with going through the checkpoint.
There is a question in the chat. Danielle Lanzetta says, my name is Danielle and I'm a wheelchair user with CP. I have a tilt-in space manual chair. How will it be stored and how can I avoid damage or lost removable parts?
That's a phenomenal question, Danielle. And I give you two recommendations. Number one, that's the airline. That's the airline because of the fact that in terms of where it's going to be stored and avoiding damage. But I would also go on the Department of Transportation. So not Transportation Security Administration, but the Department of Transportation, because the Federal Air Carriers Act protects things like that. And they have helpful hints and information to be able to help you with making sure that your wheelchair doesn't get lost or damaged while it's in cargo during your flights.
What about identification for children? What do you recommend if parents are traveling, if they've never traveled with their child, if they only have a birth certificate? Do we need to have an ID, or what level of identification should they think about as traveling with the child?
Okay, so I think again, in terms of young, very young children, you don't necessarily have to have, they don't need an identification because they're with you as parents. We do screen children over the age of 12, so 13 and up, we screen them. So again, for children with disabilities, traveling with family members, or I just had a group of 47 students with disabilities traveling with chaperones out of Salt Lake City, then, we made sure that it all went through TSA Cares so that they would know that you've got minor children, so they're not going to have IDs, but also in terms of screening because of the sensory disabilities and other things to be able to handle that. So I think whatever you're comfortable with as parents or guardians, what's going to give you the best peace of mind? Yeah.
Yes. When you're saying screening, just for the parents who may not have flown, who may not know what you mean when you're saying screening, what do you mean when you say screening?
Okay, no, great question. Thank you. Dial me all the way back to TSA 101. I appreciate that. So again, in terms of screening, let's just say you're not pre-checking, you're going through standard screening. So in that situation, you're going to need to remove, shoes, belts, laptops, those kinds of things. And again, that's the place where TSA.gov is really helpful to help you through that process. But again, as you're going through, and let's say you didn't use TSA Cares. Let's just say that you're going through as a family, didn't realize it, didn't know about it, whatever. Then again, when you go to the travel document checker, the first officer that you're going to encounter, you're going to give that individual the IDs, for the adults. I mean, IDs for the people that need to have IDs, and the boarding passes for all of the travelers. They're going to match up. So when I'm screening, when I'm looking at Christy Angel in front of me, your driver's license, your passport, whatever you've given me, that photo needs to look like the person standing in front of me. So it's obviously because we're security screening. Once you get through in terms of the travel document checker, now you're going through screening. So in a situation here, you're going to walk into the advanced imaging technology, or the AIT, and this is the tube kind of machine where you put your hands up, you put your feet on the yellow footprints, and that's going to go around and screen you. When you come out of that, the officer will either clear you that there were no alarms, and alarms for TSA are visual and not audible. So alarms are what show up as we call bounding boxes on the screen once the travelers go through, and they're going to say, there's an alarm showing on your back. I need to do a pat down, and it'll be a pat down by the officer of the same gender that you present. So again, Christy, if I'm screening you and I'm the officer, you present as a woman. So therefore, if I'm the officer on the other side, I'm going to say you have an alarm on your back, and I'm going to do the screening. I'm going to provide you all of the advisements of how I'm going to touch you and what I'm going to do. And then, I'm going to ask you if you have any questions or anything else. Does that help in clarifying a bit?
Yes. I do see Aisha Husbands has a question again. Go ahead, Aisha.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, my daughter had her music playing. Just piggybacking on what you were saying before about screening, a tip, something that has been helpful when we've traveled, wearing clothes, like something easy for her. She doesn't have a belt on, she doesn't have suspenders, she doesn't, like, the shoes are easy to take off and on, she doesn't have to lace in them. And then, like, everything is in her bag, and she gets used to taking those things out and knowing that what must be taken out, and it's in like a little pouch. So anything that may be detected, may set off her alarm, is in a pouch. So she doesn't accidentally leave it in her bag. It's already taken out. So that's just something that we've done that I think has been helpful. It's a little thing, but I think it's been helpful. So it's in delays and possible extending the interaction with TSA, which may not be what we want to do when we're trying to catch a flight.
Well, right, exactly. And you also don't want to overstimulate. And that's excellent. So I do the same thing. I mean, every time I travel, it's like, I'm going to have on a pair of black yoga pants. I'm going to have a loose tunic. I'm not going to have any belt. I'm going to make sure that there are no sequins or grommets or anything, nothing metal on my clothing. I'm going to make sure that, again, that's why I wear yoga pants instead of jeans, because I don't want a lot of buttons and zippers or anything that could alarm, even for me. even for me, and I've worked at TSA for almost 8 years, but that's excellent in terms of minimize that. The same thing for me. I just wear, quick, like slip on Tom's shoes, in and out type of thing in that situation. It minimizes my interaction at the checkpoint, and it gets me through quickly, because I'm not always the earliest person to arrive at the checkpoint. I'll just admit that in that situation, that sometimes I'm running later than I should be, even though I know better professionally. But thank you for that, because those are great, helpful hints.
When like I'll just say in my personal experience, what I do love that parents may not know, and correct me if I'm wrong if it's not this way across the board. As a child, my son's on the spectrum. He has Down syndrome, ADHD, all kinds of stuff going on. When I've gone through a flight where I forgot to do TSA cares and I only did the flight and I got stuck in the security line and it went really, really, really bad. Airlines will help you guys out if you crash and burn. So please go back to them, because my travel back home was paid for. They didn't charge me the fee to change my flights. They understood what was happening. The next day when I went back, the airline helped me, got the TSA cares. We went through immediately, and they gave us help all the way to the gate. And then they let the airline know who we were, and we were allowed to board first. And it was so helpful. The century was low. People knew who he was. They were pleasant, and it was just on and off. But as a parent, one thing I would tell you, please do not forget the second half of the airplane, the flight. When you get off and you get to your destination, you still need help on the other end. You still need help on the return. So it's all of those pieces that you want to make sure to remember to plug in, because even though TSA cares, they won't go through your entire itinerary for you, but they will support you in those spaces.
No, exactly. And before we take Amy's questions in that situation, exactly, because I think it's really important, to do that. I book it, but also for me, it's like I do all of that, and I also want to board first. Because of my dwarfism, I have to climb into an airplane seat, so I want to board first in that situation, because I don't want to, because inadvertently I'm going to be next to some 300-pound, 6'5" man where I'm trying to squeeze into my seat around him. It's uncomfortable for him and for me, and it makes me more self-conscious. My disability is visible and everything else in that situation, but it makes me more self-conscious in that piece. So that's absolutely right. But I think, again, both for the plane, with working with the airline, but also TSA cares, you can book both legs of the flight, outbound and back in your return flight, with TSA cares in one phone call or one email, should you want to. But that's excellent advice. Sorry, Amy, to hold you up.
No worries. I just wanted to share a bit of my experience, which, I'm one of those customers that like to stick with something that really works and sticks it for a long time. So I've been a customer of American Airlines and United Airlines, and I truly think that there's always pros and cons, but the experience that I had with American Airlines is that, like, if you have a prescription from your primary doctor or a specialist that like indicates you have a disability, and it doesn't have to be very descriptive, but what your needs will be, what your needs are that they can provide you when you need an escort, when you need your meals, when you need assistance in priority, where your seating priority is, and your itinerary. It's really important that you have this little memo available with your passport or your ID, and you're traveling in your carry-on, because wherever you go, like I plan ahead. I have 3 of my 5 kids with disabilities, so I do plan ahead a lot of times of like, what is the meals like, and what is their dietary needs and their physical and visual issues. But when I'm come to a situation, sometimes like I have all this itinerary set, I have the schedule, I have the priority seating and like the priority lineup to get on the plane. Sometimes individuals may not be primarily thinking like these are the things that I have to be aware of. And so like I take out this memo and I'm like, here you go. This is the person who is with me, my child, and their name, and this is what their disabilities. And clear a lot of times that what can reminds them of like, this is what I had to be aware of for a customer that's riding my airlines. We've had like flight attendants who's like very, very patient of the fact like, oh, thank you for letting me know, like, long periods of time on the airplane, maybe anxieties or the meal specifically, like if you have medication that need to be refrigerated, they can do that kind of stuff for you. I think it's important to have that on hand because we just need to remind people, even though we have this set up, but we want to make sure that our trip is comfortable and our children's trips are comfortable and it's a smooth transition. And hate to kind of like have to wait off because, one time, like I literally ended up having to go to the next flight and ended up skipping because all of this confusion. But I just wanted to give that tip and trick is that to have something, in your wallet that describes, what are the challenges you may face and what you may need, because people won't think about it, especially like medications when they need to be refrigerated or certain foods that they cannot have a hold on, especially when you get on the, I know now like planes don't have peanuts, but you always have to be very cautious about peanut allergies. So I just want to share that, but thank you.
Thank you.
Amy, you're absolutely right. I'll piggyback on that with her. I'm going to have a presentation from an organization called ifineedhelp.org. And basically, they give you lanyards and basically information that says, I'm a caregiver. It has a lanyard that says caregiver with information of, I am the mother of this particular person with this particular set of needs. If I am incapacitated, look for my child. Or if something happens to me, this is what my child XYZ. And then there's a badge that your child can wear to say, these are, I don't want to say my disabilities, but it lets you list out what people should know about your child. And I'll tell you, having those lanyards on, moving through the airport made things a lot easier. And I know with Amy saying having that list just in case too, there are a lot of things and checkpoints that you kind of have to think of. But I will say that TSA Cares makes it a lot easier. And I know that a lot of people want to travel. I was one of those parents, and it's like, what can we do? What level of help do we really have? Because it's not something that is blatantly out there. I think I found out online one day. So this is why I wanted to make sure we could have this tool accessible to our parents to say, hey, you can go too. You can travel too. And this is a support that you can get along the way. And it's not strenuous. It's pretty easy. I will say, Marie, they give you what am I trying to say? The email as a confirmation.
Yes.
And
yes.
So I made sure to have that when I traveled. Did you want to speak about the back end of it or?
Sure. I mean, in terms of, right. And I think those things are all important in terms of taking care of your family and whatever. And yes, you will get an email confirmation. And again, much like the, what other documentation you're carrying on behalf of your children, your family, whatever, print out that email. I mean, I do this in every part of my life in that situation. It's like, I print out that email when I'm going to pick something up of like, no, here's the confirmation that it will be ready today at 2:00 in that situation, because it's always helpful. And the other thing too is mistakes happen. I mean, mistakes happen, and sometimes the communication doesn't go through or whatever. If you are at the checkpoint, you put in a TSA Cares request, but somehow you get to the checkpoint and it's not there, again, I understand how it feels, because I have more meltdowns in my life than I wish I did. But if you can maintain your composure in that situation and say, okay, but I really need, is there a PSS, or is there a supervisor, or is there someone who can help us through, given what my child's needs are, and the rest of my family and that kind of thing. So, again, or your child's been fine, but suddenly, the meltdown happens just as you get to the TSA checkpoint and you didn't have the TSA Cares thing through. I mean, just ask for a supervisor or a passenger support specialist right there. Officers are trained. Officers are trained in that situation. It's PSS, passenger support specialist. I mean, or even a supervisor in that situation, because these officers go through additional training. Just like to be a supervisor, you go through additional training, and they get individual modules on disabilities and medical conditions, and especially ones that are more unique. I mean, both from a standpoint of people wearing insulin pumps, people who have ostomies, people on ventilators, and certainly intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, sensory disabilities, because in that situation, it's not the same level of independence, whether it's a child or an adult, of understanding what's going on. A lot of what we've discussed already this evening. So I think, but again, the same thing is making sure that you've got it. And I think that, again, if you're going someplace for a week and you did everything for TSA cares going out, but you didn't book it yet, once you're there for a couple of days and you relaxed a little bit, just remember to make that phone call. Remember to make that phone call at least 3 calendar days out, so that, again, everything can be happening when you're coming back from Puerto Vallarta or Puerto Rico or Disney or any place back to New York, New Jersey, because it's peace of mind for all of you. And again, same thing. It's like, you wake up that morning with a headache and not feeling well. You don't want to have to think of, like, what are the 27 other things I have to think of to get through the airline, to get through TSA, to get, checked out of the hotel and everything else. Great information from all of you.
In the chat, I do see Marie said on TSA.gov, there's also a TSA notification card that you can hand to a TSA officer should you wish to, and it's not a requirement. I do have one more question before we go to Ms. Vanessa. It says, how do you go about filling out the airline disability forms, and are there different links at each location?
So again, those forms in terms of requesting assistance based on a disability really are different airline to airline. It's very frustrating for all of us as consumers, with our own disabilities or family members with disabilities. But I would just say that I do my disability request as soon as I'm making my reservation. So again, I go right away to their disability or accessibility or services for people with disabilities page, and I find out what the requirements are. Do I need to send an email? Do I need to call an 800 number? What do I need to do, for my own needs, so that I do it right away? Because I tend to be one of those people that forgets to connect the dots. Like, okay, I made my reservation, I got my seat assignment, but I didn't do the wheelchair assist, or I didn't do, the meal that I need to have because I need to take medication at 2 p.m. or that kind of thing. So I need to make sure that I order a meal on the plane, or I'm allowed to take a meal, from one of the restaurants on the plane. So I think in that situation, each airline is different. So again, I think that, whether United, American, Delta, whatever works for you, and you're comfortable with, and you get used to how they do their disability accommodations and services, then I think if you can travel. One thing I find to be frustrating is, since not all airlines travel to all cities that I'm going to, sometimes I have to take an airline I'm not familiar with. So I'm just making sure that I'm booking those services in advance, because again, it's like going through a whole new experience if I have to start a whole new process. And we all know, everybody in this call this evening knows that it's more of a burden in life, for services with disabilities and medical conditions, because the able-bodied world just doesn't understand.
Thank you for that. Ms. Vanessa, you can go ahead and unmute to ask your question.
Good evening. Can you hear me? I don't know.
Yes.
Okay. I have 2 questions. You mentioned being able to take more food on the plane because of let's say the disability. Like my children, I have 2 boys with autism nonverbal. One of them gets very upset when he doesn't get food, and you think because of that I will be able to take more snacks on the plane? Would they
call TSA.gov to get that? Talk TSA Cares to get that as part of the request for assistance that you need because of your child's disability.
Okay. Another question is to get the assistance through the TSA screening. So after you check in at the airport counter with the airline, is that when they assist you then, or you have to notify somebody at the screening line?
Well, again, do TSA Cares in advance so you get the confirmation and get the reservation for the TSA Cares assistance. And then what typically is going to happen is, once you get to the airline counter and you check your bags and do whatever, you get a wheelchair escort or whatever there, as soon as you go then to the first TSA officer, the travel document checker, who's going to check your boarding passes and your IDs, that's when you say, I have a TSA Cares request, and show them the confirmation email or have it ready in that situation. So you can say, my name is Vanessa, and they go, oh yes, Vanessa, Officer, John Smith is coming to help you. One moment, please.
Okay, thank you. You think, would they look at me? I feel like people, not people, but a lot of workers don't believe that I have two nonverbal children. Are they gonna give me an issue that I need assistance with two children?
No, they're not. I mean, again, like I said, we just had assistance for 25 children with 6 chaperones on a school trip last week. No. But again,
Okay.
call TSA Cares to get the information ahead of time. Again, especially with 2 children, you
Right.
want that assistance, for you and for your children. And it's better to do that ahead of time and get the confirmation than making that request, at the airport day of travel.
Okay. Thank you so
Okay?
much.
My
And to
pleasure. Thank
piggyback,
you.
if I can, if you do it in enough time, it shows up on your ticket when you check in. It'll show up on the ticket. But
I
have
traveled
also,
before and they didn't, I mean, I requested with the airline itself, but they didn't really, I mean, they didn't assist with anything.
I've had that happen before too. And you know what saved me? My email. As soon as I showed the email, that was a confirmation. TSA
Okay,
Cares.
see, I called. I'll do an
Same
email
here.
next time.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
email. You want that written record. I'm just saying that as someone with experience, not just with TSA, but anywhere in that situation. That written record, that confirmation, someone writing back to you and saying, yes, thank you for your request. You're all set, type of thing. Airline, TSA Cares, whatever. You want that with you, especially
And the
coming
main
up to summer
person that
travel.
with
Yeah.
and I'll say LaGuardia versus JFK for me was a different experience. LaGuardia seemed to have it on pack. They just knew what to do. JFK, a couple of people didn't even know the program existed, but I was able to move through because once we got to the TSA part, they knew. So I was like, hey, well, my son can't really walk and he has sensory and I have this email. And she was like, okay, got it, literally. And that was it. So it was a very brief period of time of who might not have known and who knew and how I was taken care of. But
And that's what I want to hear. I want to hear that as soon as you say something, show them then that instant connection of the empathy and the care and the respect to get you and your family through.
yes, absolutely. Are there any other questions? I thank you so much, Maria. I really feel like I love empowering parents, and as a council member, that's what we all do. And so making sure people can be mobile and fly comfortably and go to Disney if they want to, or go visit family, just knowing that they can be able to make these moves and it's available really is helpful. Are there any other questions before we close out our meeting today? I don't see any other questions. Marie's information is in the chat. What I will do, this session will live on our YouTube page. So I'm going to make sure that we have this on our www.ccd75.org and on the outreach page for YouTube. I will have Marie's information, contact, and email so that we can make sure that she can still keep presenting and or help you out personally so that your travel is set and good as you go. Co-President Side, do you have any closing words?
I think it's just thank you so much for sharing. I think it's important that we feel in the disability justice work is that making sure families and individuals with disabilities feel comfortable that they could be a part of the experience of leaving their home and explore wherever they want to go. Like either it's a family vacation, either it's to a new job at a different state or a different country, that they have this access of, being able to get to the airport, feel that they could be escorted, they can have empathy, they can have the resources that are available. And it may vary, right? Every airport in the country or in the world, but I think this being the access of that there is that first initial thing that we need to continue to push and have people begin to travel. Yes, it's just an individual, I think, having anxiety of traveling, but imagine you have a disability or having, family members that have a disability, it discourages people to want to travel. So having this, I think it's a good encouragement of, setting your itinerary, your schedules, what you need, talk to the people that have the experience, talk to the people that, have been doing this and, go out there and travel. And I think with everything that we've been through, we all deserve to enjoy ourselves, to go somewhere. I just want to say thank you so much to Christy for sharing this, because I think as we are approaching Memorial Weekend in the summer, it gives people opportunity to know, not just the airlines, because like I said earlier, I stick with American Airlines, United Airlines for the longest, just because I feel most secure with them. And it's like when I pick up a customer service, they can connect me to whomever I need to make sure, like, you know, they know my child has seizures and like what they can do. They also told me like have those nauseousness bracelets when my daughter travels on the plane. So there is things that we don't know, but it's wonderful to have real people, real live, you know, connection through airlines and from TSA and from, you know, and especially in a big airport like JFK, because I don't know how you got through it, but I think just having these tips and tricks is great. So thank you.
TSA cared. That's how I got through it. Because I'm going to tell you now, I needed the help. It was tremendous. So Marie, is there anything else that you think that we should plug into the chat to make sure that the parents have on the way out, or is there anything else that we should?
I think that the thing that I recommend, because again, it's like our press release for summer travel just came out today. We are updating TSA.gov all the time. So again, in that situation, I think, you know, if you've got questions about what can you pack or whatever, you know, spend some time on TSA, you know, .gov when you can, you know, kind of get familiar with it. But again, don't hesitate to call, you know, TSA Cares just with like advanced questions type of thing. But also, again, as all of you have discussed, and some of you have experience, make sure you're calling the airline as well. You know, because airline to airline, it's different. TSA, we're one agency, and so TSA Cares is all 450 airports. But I think in that situation, and I think the other thing too is, you know, if there's anything that you find is missing or anything, you know, that you experience and whatever, please send me an email. If there's something that's missing or something that went wrong, I would say, I know it's more of a burden, but please file a civil rights complaint. Please go to TSA.gov and file a civil rights complaint. If it was TSA, I can only handle TSA. But I think in that situation, you know, if there's a rogue officer out there, or if there's something that just should have happened that didn't, in that way, not wishing it, but again, we screen 2.6 million people a day on Friday. That's a lot of people, and we're all human beings. I made a mistake last week that I never should have made because I was just stressed and tired. And so we're all human in that moment. But I think it's when, you know, or if something's not happening at a certain airport, if something's not happening, you know, at, you know, Newark versus JFK or LaGuardia, we can't move mountains, but it's good for us to know, because we work on training products and other things to help the airports and the officers, to help all of you to have, you know, a less stressful screening experience. So thank you.
One last question. Is there a link to somewhere that I can provide with parents if they want to practice at an airline or airport, where they can kind of get their child practiced with the sensory? Do they still do that? Is it available?
Yeah, I mean, it's still, and it's usually done with organizations. That's why I said, you know, send me an email if that's something that you want to do, but it's also something that we may be able to do, you know, even through like your school district, even through, you know,
Okay.
your committee and whatever else. If that's something that you want to, we probably can't do it now because of the fact of coming up to travel, you know, in terms of really, really busy. But I think it's one of those things that if it's something that you want to do, send me an email, and we'll at least get it in the works. We'll at least get
Okay,
it socialized
absolutely.
in that situation, because I think, you know, that would be a really good idea. Definitely.
Okay, well, we will definitely keep the lines of communication open. We appreciate all of you coming and for your time. And Marie, thank you again for presenting. Again, we will have this online for you guys and available. And if you have any further questions, we will make sure that the communication and with Marie is available. Again, thank you guys. This is going to conclude our meeting, and everyone have a great night. Marie, I will be looping back with you, and good night, and thank you guys again.